Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Welcome to our third session on Islam and our final session in the Religions of the World class. Now I finally went to the Omar Mosque in Patterson as I had promised the last time. Right here is the mosque on Getty Avenue in Patterson. I decided to come to the Omar Mosque because Omar is actually one of the important people in the early history of Islam after Muhammad died. Today, as we will finish with Islam, we will be talking about the successions, how Islam continued to move after Muhammad died, and brings Islam's history all the way to today. That is still quite a chunk of territory to cover, but I want to try to make it quickly, and so I will only touch on certain areas so that this video won't get too long and we don't get lost in too many details. But let's begin with the last few years of Muhammad. After he had conquered Mecca and made the Kaaba a Muslim site, he did have a chance to make the Umrah, which is a pilgrimage to Mecca outside of the Hajj, a few times. But in 632, he decided to go on the real Hajj. On that visit, he made several farewell remarks. He also showed his followers how he was performing the Hajj and how he was doing all the different kinds of rituals. Of course, his followers carefully took note of that, which is all recorded in Hadith and is the basis for how the Hajj is performed these days. After he finished the Hajj, he returned home to Medina, where he fell ill, probably unexpected, and died only a few months after the Hajj. I'm saying that it must have been unexpected because by the time Muhammad died, he had not dealt with the question of his successor. It would have been much easier if Muhammad himself had determined who should follow him as the leader of the Muslim world. By the time Muhammad died, he had actually converted much of the Arabian Peninsula towards Islam. But the question is, who would continue leading it? And so the Ummah had to figure it out by itself, the Muslim community. Some leaders in the Ummah thought that it should be somebody from Muhammad's family. Now, there was a problem because the only two sons that Muhammad ever had with Khadija had died before Muhammad did. And so there were only the 4 girls from that first marriage from Khadija, but no male successor. Others believed that it shouldn't be at all within the family line, but it should be the most capable leader, the most knowledgeable person that could continue leading this. There was a big debate ensuing that finally gave the vote to Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr was only about 3 years younger than Muhammad. He was born in 573 in Mecca and had been one of Muhammad's most staunchest supporters throughout his work in early Islam. And so Abu Bakr seemed to be a good choice for a leader, except that he was actually part of Muhammad's family in some ways too, because he was the father of Aisha. Aisha was Muhammad's 3rd wife, whom he married when she was really very young, only about 7 years old. Aisha was only 19 years old in 632 when Muhammad died, but she really became one of Muhammad's staunchest supporters. We hear much about her from the Hadith, where she has been one of the narrators telling about the life of Muhammad in very loving and supportive ways. But there was another group among the Ummah that believed it should be Ali who should be the successor to Muhammad. Now, Ali was Muhammad's son-in-law. He had married Fatima, one of the 4 girls from Muhammad's first wife Khadija. And so the debate ensued between Abu Bakr and Ali, which one should be the leader of the Ummah, the Muslim community. The majority fell on Abu Bakr. They chose the path of tradition, although tradition is still to be developed here, but the path of tradition is what is called the Sunnah or the Sunni. Whereas the party of Ali, translated as Shia, who supported Ali, were the ones who lost the debate, and Abu Bakr became the next leader of Islam. Sadly, Abu Bakr did not survive very long. He only was the first caliph, as it was called, from 632 to 634, when he succumbed to illness and died, and the whole debate came up again. And of course, the party of Ali, the Shia, wanted that Ali would be this time selected as the leader, but the rest of the Ummah decided on Omar. There we have the person after whom this mosque is named, which is the reason of why I'm here. Omar continued the traditions of Islam and expanded Islam into the Levant, which is the Holy Land, and into Zoroastrian land, the Sasanian Empire. Well, I'll be moving on from here because it's a little funny to walk in front of the mosque all the time. So I hooked up my phone to my car stand, and as we are driving by Omar Mosque one more time, I will keep on telling you the story. So one important discussion that occurred during the time with Abu Bakr and also with the following leaders is whether the revelations that Muhammad had received for the Quran, whether it should not be written down. There was the fear that many Muslims, especially at one of the big battles, had died, those who had memorized the Quran, and the fear was that if people don't write it down, then that the Quran after a while would either be changed or forgotten, and Islam would get lost. And so there were those who said that it should not be written down, and others who debated and said it should be written down, otherwise it would get lost. And so there was a whole group of people that came together, and they all decided to recite various different ayahs that they remembered. And so there was a whole project about writing down the Quran, which then was preserved at some point. There was a long story and a long history about the making of the Quran that is too long to get into here. But in any case, Omar was successful as the second caliph for about 10 years, from 634 to 644. When he died in 644, there was another debate again. Would it this time be the time for Ali to lead the Ummah? But again, the majority decided that it wouldn't be Ali, but this time it would be Uthman who would be the leader of Islam. Uthman was born in 579 CE in Taif and became the caliph, the third caliph, in 644 CE. He died in 656 in Medina. Again, the debate was opened up who would be the next rightful caliph. Would it be Ali this time? And this time it was. Although Ali was not without opposition, there was another leader by the name of Muawiyah strongly opposed the election of Ali to be the fourth caliph. Muawiyah was from a rich tribe in Mecca among the Quraysh who had opposed Muhammad all the way up to the conquest of Mecca in 630. It was only after 630 that Muawiyah converted to Islam and became Muhammad's scribe. Muawiyah thought that he should be the next caliph. Uthman was assassinated in 656 CE. Even though Ali did not really have anything to do with Uthman's assassination, Muawiyah was set to avenge the assassination. In 661, Ali was also assassinated. Ali had two sons, those are the grandsons of Muhammad, Hassan and Hussein. In Sunni Islam, Ali is seen as the fourth caliph. For Shia, Ali is seen as the first imam, as the Shia believe that with Ali, finally the first rightful leader was elected. Finally, within all the warring that happened within the Muslim community, Muawiyah convinced Hassan to abdicate as caliph, and with that a split occurred between the Shia, those who followed Ali and now his son Hassan, and those who were following Muawiyah from the Umayyad dynasty. After 9 years of leading the Shia, in the year 670, Hassan's wife is said to have poisoned him so that he died. After Hassan's death, Hassan's younger brother Hussein to become the next imam, so he became the third imam in Shia Islam. In 680, Muawiyah died from the Umayyad, and his son Yazid I became the leader in Umayyad. Yazid then was out to get Hussein and came after his life. Hussein was traveling from Medina to Karbala. Yazid made a raid on Hussein's group and pretty brutally killed Hussein. The Battle of Karbala took place on the 10th day of Muharram in the year 61 after Hijrah, or October 10th, 680 CE. It is remembered as a traumatic battle that sealed the split between Shia and Sunni. In the town of Karbala, there is still up to today a big mosque and mausoleum for Hussein, who was so brutally assassinated and his family was enslaved and mistreated. This battle is commemorated in the third holiday in Islam, which is Ashura. It's celebrated differently in Sunni and in Shia. Both of them, though, remember it. For Sunni, it's not such an important day, although they do remember it with fasting and with special prayers. In Shia, it's really important. You see that Shia followers are beating themselves bloody sometimes to remember the horrible ends of the Battle of Karbala. So let me continue driving. I think I will continue the story at the Great Patterson Falls. So I arrived at the Great Patterson Falls, but sadly everything is closed up here, so I can only give you a large shot. Here are the Great Patterson Falls, but maybe that is also a symbol for the downfall of the Umayyad. The events of 680 and the Yazid's killing of Hussein was so abhorrent that it didn't only offend Shia, but also many of the Sunni in the Umayyad. So the Umayyad only lasted until about 750 CE, when it was taken over by the Abbasids. The Abbasids lasted from 750 to 1258. So it is the Abbasids that were in charge around Jerusalem when the Crusaders came through. Since everything is closed up here, I will just drive up to Garrett Mountain and get a bit more beautiful view of the world. So maybe like Islam also expanded into the world. So now I'm on top of Garrett Mountain. If you found the stories confusing and all the battles, you lost track of everything, don't worry about it. The most important thing to remember is that Islam really only stayed together as one community for 29 years after the death of Muhammad. It was really only through the first 5 Rashidun that there was one community, with Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, and then not even a year with Hassan. Of course, during that time they were also trying to build the Ummah. Not only did they expand widely into the world by capturing the Byzantine and the Sassanid empires, But they also try to establish, like the writing of the Quran, for example, or collecting stories about Muhammad and how he lived and practiced Islam through the Hadith. But you also can see that throughout those fights that occurred, the question is how reliable historically this really all is. There were several revisions of the Quran, depending on who did it, that the Quran today is really not exactly reliable to what Muhammad was revealed. Those who think that Petra might be the origin of Islam, you can see that in the fights that the change might have occurred from Petra to Mecca. But let's quickly summarize the most important differences between Sunni and Shia. So Sunni always were trying to follow the tradition, not so much about a human leadership, but the tradition as it was shared in the Ummah and as it was passed on through the leaders who then agreed upon a common history. And that's how you have the four schools of Islam. Those four schools are Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali. And whatever the scholars in those schools come up with, they don't always have to agree on things, but they are agreeing to mutually respect each other and develop their tradition for Sunni Islam. For the Shia, it was always important from the very beginning that the leader is important. That's why they were the party of Ali. So finally, when the split happened in 661, Ali was seen as the first rightful imam or leader, followed by Hassan as the second imam and Hussein the third imam. And so in Shia Islam, it is believed that it is through the leadership of those imams that the belief and the faith is being interpreted. And the sequence of imams lasted for 12 imams all the way into the 9th century at some point, when the 12th imam somehow disappeared. Since the disappearance of the 12th imam, who then is believed to may have been assumed into heaven somehow and is expected to return someday, somewhat like the Messiah returning in Christianity, in the meantime, there are placeholders that are called the Ayatollahs. And it is the leadership of the Ayatollahs that decides today what Shia Islam is about. One branch of Islam that we haven't talked about yet is Sufism. Sufis don't really see themselves as a separate branch within Islam. They see themselves as Shia or Sunni, but practice Sufism within them. Sufis are a more mystical or spiritual kind of version of Islam. You might compare it to the Pentecostal branch of Islam. So back a little bit to history and fast forwarding through it. I had said that the Abbasids had replaced the Umayyad in 750 and that the Abbasids lasted till 1258 CE, when the Mongols came in and undid the Abbasid dynasty. The Umayyad, even though they were dismantled in 750, escaped moreover to Spain and built the whole Umayyad empire in Spain. The undoing of the Abbasid by the Mongols only lasted for a short while, because in 1299 the Ottoman Empire began to be established in Turkey, and that ruled over most of parts of Europe until 1923. While the Ottoman Empire had a strong hold on Turkey and Europe, the Arabian Peninsula was pretty much under normal Sunni Islam until the birth of Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab. He was born in 1703 in Uyayana in Najd. He died in 1792 in Diriyah. Al-Wahhab came out of the Hanbali school, but began to interpret the teachings of Hanbali in a very rigorous and fundamentalistic way. Al-Wahhab disliked the worship of Muslims at certain holy sites and tombs of the saints. At the same time as al-Wahhab was trying to bring a new, much more conservative strand to Sunni Islam, there was Mohammed bin Saud, who was trying to unify the Arabian Peninsula into a kingdom. So Mohammed bin Saud and Mohammed ibn al-Wahhab made a pact, a religious political pact. The religious political pact between Saud and al-Wahhab enabled the two of them to build the Saudi Empire more and more in the Arabian Peninsula. The allegiance between the two families remained. The House of Saud, as you know from the name of Saudi Arabia, remained in power since the 1700s and opened up the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in 1932. To this day, Wahhabism is the official state religion of Saudi Arabia, and Wahhabism gained explosive expansion and growth since the 1970s when oil became important. A lot of the money from oil was used to, or is used to support Wahhabism, to spread it all over the world. Oftentimes foundations, Muslim foundations are being supported through Saudi oil, and therefore mosques and other foundations are being infiltrated sometimes by Wahhabism. Wahhabism would say that modern Islam is a distortion of the original Islam, while most Muslims would say that Wahhabism is an ultra-conservative, far-right, austere, fundamentalist, puritanical and version of Islam that is a deviant sect and a vile sect. Wahhabis see themselves as reformists, as a reform movement within Islam to establish Tawhid, which is pure monotheism. After the fall of the Ottoman Empire and the end of First World War, the winning powers, France and Great Britain, divided up the Middle East into basically the borders of what we know today. That caused also a counter movement in Egypt. They're called oftentimes the Salafis. The Salafis were also a more conservative Islamic group, and in some ways they have merged with Wahhabism from Saudi Arabia these days and are the root for organizations like ISIS or ISIL, the Islamic State in Iraq, and Al-Qaeda also comes out of the Salafis and the Wahhabis. Osama bin Laden comes from a famous family also in Saudi Arabia, the bin Laden family. Osama's views were so radical that his family disowned him, which is why he left for Afghanistan, from where he masterminded the attack on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon in 2001. But most of the terrorist groups today have their roots within Wahhabism and among the Salafis. Before we end, I don't want to leave it on such negative note though. Hopefully you saw throughout the course how Islam can be a beautiful religion and how the majority of Muslims have nothing to do with terrorism and those things we have in the news. So hopefully that gave you a little overview over Islam and the modern developments. We have come to the end of our course, and I want to wish you all the best. I hope that you got a lot of things with you for life from this course, that you understand the cultures around the world more, and I miss seeing you at the end of class. Hopefully our paths will cross again. Otherwise, I will wish you all the best for your future journey. Assalamu alaikum. Bye-bye.